Good day, race fans. My name is Sam. Welcome back to Motor Racing and Gravy. I'm going to do a video that I've already done once before. If you've been a long-time viewer to the channel, you've seen the video I put out about a year and a half ago called "Being a Hauler Driver: My Story." I'm going to redo that video because there's been a lot of new viewers to the channel, and I still get a lot of the same questions. And to be quite honest, I went back and watched it the other day, and the video is just terrible. Clearly, I wasn't very comfortable on camera yet when I made it. So we're going to go back and redo that, and we're going to revisit some of the same things, and going to try to throw in a few new things. All right, we'll do that in 6 seconds. So how this is going to go, I'm going to talk about how I got the job, because I get that question most often. You know, how did you land this job? I get that a lot. How did you manage to get this? How does one go about getting the job like this? And then after that, I'll go into how that led me to where I'm at now, and then some of the details of what the job entails and what I do. So 4 years ago, I was not in NASCAR at all. I was an arborist. Now, I've been around racing through track security and a few other odd jobs for many, many years, but my career was as an arborist in Charlotte, North Carolina area. It would be fair to ask, how did I go from doing that to doing this? You know, I lived in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, which is, honestly, that's step one. People ask me, how do you get this job? That's the first thing I tell them. You got to live in the Charlotte area. You know, I lived in that area. I worked in that area. And I thought, I'm going to give this another shot. I had given it a shot kind of blindly maybe 10 years earlier. Looking back, it's a good thing I didn't, because I wasn't ready. So I decided I'm going to give it another shot. And what I did was pretty simple. I just made up a good-looking resume that highlighted the skills I thought would make me valuable to a race team. And you got to figure, race team's not a typical job. You know, they value teamwork, they value problem-solving skills, and they value the ability to think fast and make quick decisions in a timely, efficient, and safe manner. So I tried to highlight those skills, the things I had done in my past that give me those skills in my resume. Seeing as I had no actual race team experience, I needed to highlight the things that I thought would make me valuable to a race team, even though I had no experience. I made a nice looking cover letter, explained my background and the resume, bought some black folders, put one on each side of them, threw on a polo shirt and some nice blue jeans, and I made a different one for every team, and I literally took them to every team in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. And about 3 days after, I got a call from David Gilliland Racing, now Tricon Garage. They didn't actually get my resume, but I had made a good enough impression at Front Row Motorsports that they were technically aligned with David Gilliland Racing at the time. And so when David Gilliland Racing was looking for a backup driver, they contacted Front Row. Front Row said, hey, we just got a guy come in here, had a good looking resume, maybe you should give him a call. And I got that phone call. And that's probably how your first, if you're out for this job, that's probably how your first chance will go. Most guys, that's how it starts. They start off as a backup driver, and it leads eventually, if you show that you want to learn the business, show that you have the capacity to do this job and you want this job, it'll lead to a full-time position if you just keep at it long enough. I got pretty lucky. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I got really lucky. My timing was perfect. So I got that backup driver role. I did 2 races with David Gilliland Racing. We won the second one, which ruined me for life, by the way. To quote Neil Bonnet, quote, "The worst thing that can happen to a racer is to win a race." And he's right. Ruined me for life. So won that second race. After we won that second race, they didn't really have a need for backup drivers for the rest of the year. That was late in the 2022 season. And honestly, I thought that may have been it. This was a one-time thing. I got to experience it. Great. That was probably the end of the road. But I did make it clear to people, anybody who had listened, that this is what I wanted to do full-time. And just so happens the guy that I was driving with happens to know a guy who worked at Young's Motorsports. Their hauler driver quit on the spot. No notice. He just left. And they made some phone calls. They got in touch with the guy that I happened to have been backup driving for at David Gilliland, and asked him if they knew anybody. And he said, well, I just had a good backup driver. He's kind of looking to get into this full time, and give him a call. And so they said, do you want to come to this one race with us? We need you for Mid-Ohio. They made no promises of anything after that. So I went and did Mid-Ohio with them. And that Monday they said, we talked to David Gilliland Racing, and they said that they weren't going to be using any backup drivers for the rest of the season. You want a full-time job here? And I'm absolutely. So I went from in about a 3-week time period, I went from making my resume to having a full-time gig. That won't happen for everybody. My timing was perfect. I got really lucky. I'm a very, very, very fortunate man. And a friend of mine I made who works for Henderson Motorsports, Jamie Bishop, he gave me some good advice, which he gave me some really good advice, and that was networking is key. And he was dead on the money with that. Working for Tyler Young, I don't know if his family and friends still watch this show or not, but working for Tyler Young really set me up well. It put me in contact with a lot of really good people. You know, if you've been watching the channel, you know I worked for Wilson Motorsports. It's a super late model team, but it's a very serious race team. I still work with those guys. It also put me in contact with Mark Rett, the owner of Rett Jones Racing. Did some races for him. Beard Motorsports, that come from working with Tyler Young. And even the job I have now, I went to rescue the driver of the number 25 Rackley Wall Racing hauler. His name is Joe Horeski, and we went to take their stuff from their hauler, take it to their shop in Nashville, Tennessee. But that got me in contact with that driver. That driver at the end of the last season decided he was going to move over to Charlotte and become the transportation director for McAnally Hilgeman Racing. You see how it all comes full circle? So the short answer is, if you want to get in this thing, I would recommend doing it the way I did it. And I've had a couple people ask me, I've had people ask me this question all the time, but I've had a couple people ask me, how do you do it? And I tell them the same thing. Make up a good looking resume. Highlight your skills that will make you valuable to a race team and give it to everyone who'll take it. Eventually you'll get a shot as a backup if you have something that they value. And I've had a couple people say when I've told them that, well, I don't need a resume. I have a DAC, which, if you don't know, a truck driver has what's called a DAC. It's a report that follows that truck driver around different companies worked at and his safety record at those companies. Well, why do you ask me for my advice if you're not going to take it? That's not good enough. You need, every truck driver, not every truck driver can do this job. Being a truck driver is literally about that much of what I do. That's what I want to get into. I get asked all the time, what do I do during the off season? What do I do during the week we're not racing? The answer is I'm at the shop working with the team, working on the hauler. I take care of all the pit equipment, the pit box, the generator box, the garage box, the fuel cart, all the equipment that goes in and out of the hauler. It's all my responsibility to make sure it's looking good, make sure it's restocked, make sure the nitrogen bottles are refilled, make sure there's fuel in the generator, make sure there's water in the cool down, make sure that's ice ready for the cool down. All these things are my responsibility, and it is a full-time job. And that kind of leads to the next question people ask a lot is, how much do you make? Obviously, I'm not going to get into how much I make personally on my YouTube channel. However, I will tell you this. The lowest paid hauler driver that I know of personally in the truck series or in any NASCAR series makes about $1,000 a week. The highest paid truck driver that I know of in NASCAR makes around $150,000 a year. So obviously a big gap there. Keep in mind, and the other reason I'm hesitant to answer that question is because a lot of people ask this question from all over the country, and to really understand how much money that is, you have to understand the cost of living in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Significantly lower than it is in other parts of the country. So on $150,000 a year, you can do pretty well for yourself. Now on to my job at the racetrack. And like I said earlier, driving the trucks is very small amount of what I do. We leave the shop with the race car, all the pit equipment. A couple days early, we get to the racetrack. We usually stage outside the racetrack until it's time to park. We all park at once. Once we park and everyone is parked, all the teams are in their spot and the brakes are popped and the engines are off and we're all ready, then NASCAR will give the signal for us to unload. We offload all our equipment, stage it up behind the hauler, and then we get the hauler fixed up. We get, the carpets out, everything shined up, looking good. We'll set the equipment up that needs to be set up. I'll unstrap the race car and wait for the team to get in. So team gets in, and once we unload the race car, then the first thing we do is really all geared towards going through technical inspection. We'll get the garage stall set up. We'll get the car ready for technical inspection, and then we'll push through tech. Usually most race weekends after tech, we come back to our garage stall, and then we're going to be geared towards practice. I will go get the generator cart and ice and fuel, get those out to our practice stall. The team will get the race car out to the practice stall when we start practice. Practice is usually 20 minutes. Car will make as many laps as we need to get them comfortable with what's going on for the day. We'll bring it back down, and qualifying starts usually shortly after practice. Part of the generator cart is what's called a cool-down unit. Hook the cool-down unit into the race car. I'm dumping ice in. What that does is that cycles the hot water out of the race car and puts that ice water into the race car. Gets the engine nice and cool for qualifying. We'll run 1 lap or 2 laps for qualifying. Obviously, you know how that goes. Time trial set the field for the day. Then after that, the car gets impounded. We'll push the car behind the wall with all the other race cars. We'll impound it. I'll put the generator behind it. And then we're not allowed to touch it until about an hour before race time. About an hour before race time, the team will go back to the race car. We'll get the car plugged into the generator, get the oil warmed up, make all final adjustments we're allowed to make, and then push the car out to the grid. Okay, so race starts. During the race, some truck drivers, they have very little responsibility during the race other than just to be out on pit road and available in case they need something. Other drivers take a more active role. Myself, I'm on the more active role side. So my job during the race is a behind the wall pit crew member, which means, you got the guys that go over the wall that carry the tires, jack the car up, fuel the car. That's your over the wall pit crew. Then there's the road crew, which is usually behind the wall pit crew. My job is when the tire changer goes off the wall, I toss him the hose. It sounds kind of silly and simple. It is really silly and simple. And then I immediately run back over to the fuel man. Fuel man, while I'm doing this, fuel man's putting his first can into the car. When that first can is empty, he hooks it back to me, and the other guy hands him the next fuel can if we're doing a two fuel can stop. And when I say he hucks it back at me, I mean that doggone big fuel can comes flying at me like it's a baseball. These are big guys. So when we do that, after the pit stop is over, fuel man will weigh the cans to make sure we got enough fuel in the car. I will take the empty cans over to the Sunoco truck, get them refilled and ready for the next pit stop. And then after the race is over, back to the hauler with everything. We start loading stuff up. After the race is over, then is the process of getting everything back to the truck and getting everything loaded up. The tires have to go back to Goodyear, and we load the hauler up. The car gets loaded back into the hauler, and as soon as everyone is ready to go, all the haulers exit, and we go back to the shop. And it doesn't matter how long the trip is. Like Vegas was a 38-hour drive. When we get back to the shop, not every team does this, by the way. When we get back to the shop, we have to unload the truck, at least the bottom half, which is all the pit equipment and that sort of thing. The race cars stay up top. I don't mess with those. Those will come off when the crew comes in, whatever day. If we get back on a Saturday night, when the crew comes in Sunday morning or Monday morning, they'll unload the race cars. But I get that pit equipment out and put away. That way, when I come in Monday morning, Tuesday morning, I can start pulling it back out and getting it ready for the next week. And that's, in a nutshell, a very, very basic nutshell, what my job is. In closing, is it worth it to do what I do for the money I make? And for me, the answer is definitely yes. So some people will tell you, if you ask everybody in the garage area what the worst job or the hardest job in racing is, a lot of people will say hauler driver. I happen to disagree. I love my job. I wouldn't have any other job on a race team. I wouldn't want any other job on a race team. Maybe other than race car driver. I would like that job very much. So if you have any questions about anything else, I'm sure there's stuff in here I didn't cover because it's hard to. I don't ever script these episodes. I know a lot of guys do videos like this. They script them. I never script them. I just shoot from the hip. And what comes out, comes out. So I'm sure I probably glossed over some things I shouldn't have or forgot about something as soon as I'll release this video. As soon as I release this video, I'll remember, should have put that in there and I didn't. Regardless, if you have any questions, comment them down below. I'll be sure. I try my best to answer everybody. I don't always answer the replies because I don't always get notifications about the replies, but I do try to answer all the comments. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I'll try to get to everybody. And also, while we're on the subject, obviously I don't have sponsors for these videos, but Motor Racing and Gravy has its first merch out. I'm gonna throw it up on the screen right now. That is the t-shirt. It comes in a t-shirt or hoodie. If you want to support the channel other than just count on the ad revenue, this is a good way to do it. These shirts, I love them. I hired a guy to do this design. He did a great job, and I think they're awesome to wear at the track. My family's going to the Cup race in Bristol in a couple weeks. We all plan on wearing some of these. If you want a little piece of the channel, this is a great way to do it. That's all I got for this week. Get out and support local racing if you can, and thank you for watching.